ran cold. Could they be talking about her? And if so, who else knew? Rebecca's pulse pounded in her ears as she reread the article. The words blurred as fear took hold. Was she being implicated? It was absurd. She hadn't done anything illegal. Just been rude. Cruel even. But not criminal. And yet, the way the article was written, the way it framed her as the last known person to have interacted with him, it sent chills down her spine. She scrolled through the comment section, her heart hammering. Most were condolences, prayers for his grieving mother. But some speculated. Who was the woman? Maybe she knew something about the accident? Was it really an accident? Rebecca slammed her laptop shut, nausea twisting her stomach. She couldn't stay here. Couldn't just sit with this knowledge, this gnawing feeling that something was terribly wrong. She grabbed her keys and left the apartment, barely registering where she was going until she found herself parked outside a quiet suburban home. A house covered in sympathy wreaths. His mother's house. Rebecca hesitated, fingers clenched around the steering wheel. What was she even doing here? Before she could turn back, the door opened. A frail woman, eyes red from crying, stood in the doorway. "You were on the plane with him, weren't you?" Rebecca's breath hitched. The woman's voice wasn't accusatory. It was filled with quiet pain, longing for any last piece of her son. Rebecca's throat tightened. I was. The woman nodded and stepped aside, an invitation. Rebecca swallowed hard and stepped forward, completely unaware that this visit would change everything. Because the truth behind the soldier's death was far more sinister than she could have imagined. Rebecca stepped into the house, the air thick with the scent of flowers and candle wax. The living room was dimly lit, the only illumination coming from a cluster of flickering memorial candles near a framed portrait of the soldier. His smiling face stared back at her, and the guilt in her chest grew heavier. The soldier's mother, Margaret, gestured toward the couch. "Please sit." Rebecca lowered herself onto the worn fabric, her hands fidgeting in her lap. Margaret sat across from her, wringing a tissue between her fingers. "He talked about the flight," Margaret said softly, eyes glistening. "He said he sat next to a woman who wasn't very kind to him." Rebecca's throat closed. "I'm so sorry," she whispered, tears burning the corners of her eyes. "I didn't know." Margaret shook her head. "He wasn't angry about it. Just sad." Rebecca's shame deepened. She wished Margaret would scream at her, curse her, anything to ease the burden pressing on her soul. But Margaret's face was lined with something else. Worry. "There's something strange about what happened," she said, voice lowering. "The accident, it doesn't make sense." Rebecca frowned. "What do you mean?" Margaret inhaled shakily. "A neighbor saw a black car idling outside the house that night. No plates. Just sitting there watching. And then when my son left," she swallowed hard. "It followed him." A shiver ran down Rebecca's spine. "You think someone was after him?" Margaret nodded. "And the police don't care. They say it was just a coincidence, that the crash was unfortunate timing. But I know in my gut, someone wanted my son gone." Rebecca's stomach twisted. She wanted to dismiss it as grief-induced paranoia. But then she remembered the article, the witness who mentioned a woman arguing with the soldier. Was that why the story was spreading? To make it look like she was involved, while the real culprit went unnoticed. Margaret reached for a folder on the coffee table and slid it toward Rebecca. "These are copies of the police reports, what little they gave me. You're the last person who saw him. Please, help me figure out what really happened." Rebecca hesitated, then opened the folder. Her blood ran cold. Because inside was a grainy traffic camera photo, taken just before the crash. A black car. No plates. And a shadowy figure in the driver's seat, watching. Rebecca's hands trembled as she held the photo. The shadowy figure in the driver's seat sent a chill through her veins. It wasn't just some random accident. Someone had been watching. Someone had been following him. Margaret's voice broke through her thoughts. "Do you recognize the car?" Rebecca shook her head, but her gut told her there was more to this than she could yet understand. "No, but this isn't a coincidence." Margaret nodded. "I've been trying to tell the police, but they won't listen. They think I'm just a grieving mother looking for answers where there aren't any." Rebecca glanced down at the reports. She skimmed through the details of the accident, point of impact, estimated speed, toxicology reports on the other driver. But something stood out. "There was no alcohol in the other driver's system," she said slowly. Margaret's head snapped up. "What?" Rebecca pointed at the line in the report. "The news said the driver was drunk. But this says otherwise."